In this video, I'm going to teach you a concept that's so critical to understand about how our unconscious mind actually works to protect us and how we can use it to support our success. But if you don't fully understand this concept and really own it, then the unconscious mind will continue to use our programmed ideas of right and wrong and good and bad to actually hold us back and sabotage us more away from the things that we want in our life. It's not our fault, it's just based on the program that we have. But if you understand this concept, you can turn it around and start using it in your favor. But if you don't understand and control this, you'll forever be held captive by your mind.
There's so much separation in our world. There's so much conflict, both external and internal. I'm going to talk specifically about external conflict in this call, but it's going to be applied, or it can be applied to internal conflict as well. And I might speak on that just a little bit, but I want to talk about external conflict because there's so much rivalry in our society, and there's so much prejudice, there's so much hatred, there's so much divisiveness, there's so much separation. Now, I'm not saying that it's everywhere, but there's a lot of it. And so I don't want to not focus on the gratitude and the blessings that we have all around us and the love that is there. And for the purposes of this call, I'm going to focus on what is this dissension. I'm going to focus on the conflict so that we can dissect it, dive into it, and understand what's going on. So first of all, what I want you to do, you can close your eyes if you want, you don't have to. I just want you to listen to a few of these words and just notice the way they land for you. Notice what thoughts immediately get triggered. Notice what emotions might come up. Notice the way you respond to these sounds, which is really all I'm going to say. So these are some of the labels that are used out in society a lot. Narcissism, depression, racism, sexism, ageism, all the isms, homophobia, gay, straight, feminism, masculinity, toxic masculinity, patriarchy, conservative, liberal, oppression, Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, white, black, Asian, Indian, male, female. So I could go on and on, but the point is these labels hit us in a certain way. Now, labeling itself is not bad. It's not the problem. Labeling is a function of our mind. Labeling is a necessary function of our brain. The mind that we have, the human brain, is a categorizing machine. So it labels constantly. It has to label because it's being bombarded with so many different experiences, so many bits of information that we would literally go crazy if we didn't have the ability to categorize. If we didn't have this ability to take information and put it somewhere as fast as possible. And labeling is one of the ways that we do that. Now, the reason the brain uses labels is because it wants to conserve energy. It wants to conserve its most precious resource. It also wants to conserve time. And so the brain uses labeling basically like a shortcut, which is fine when we're driving, when we are tying our shoes, when we're learning a bunch of different behavior patterns and things that are enhanced by our use of labels so that we don't have to stop at every stoplight and go, I wonder what this little collection of 3 lights means. The brain goes, I know what that means because I learned it once upon a time in the past, and this looks like just the one that we just passed a moment ago. So it's the same thing. And red means stop, and green means go, and yellow means it's about to turn red. And so we operate according to all of these categorizations that our brain makes all the time, which is happening so often under our conscious awareness, and it all helps us navigate life. So labeling itself is a function of the brain, and by itself is not a bad thing. And I would say 95, 99% of the labeling that our brain uses is beneficial for us. But because it's a shortcut, what happens is the specific experiences of a thing or the specifics of a single experience gets lumped together in order to conserve time. And when we're talking about humans, then what happens is the specifics of an individual human gets overgeneralized so that our brain can categorize this individual human into a group so that the brain can conserve energy, so that the brain can conserve time. That's where we run into all kinds of society problems, is that when humans aren't given the individual experience because we want to just conserve. And in the conversation of conflict inside of our society, one of the things that we're trying to conserve is ourself. The definition of conserve is actually to protect from harm. And applied to ourselves, we're trying to protect ourselves from harm all the time. And because the brain's number one job is to keep us alive, and then I would say number two in this context is to keep us emotionally protected, then the brain would rather overgeneralize at the risk of misunderstanding people, or at the risk of creating a little bit of societal disruption, I would say, or at the risk of offending people, at the risk of making people feel bad. The brain would rather do that if it can save itself. So the brain learns from the very beginning of our lives on this planet, it learns what's dangerous and what's not dangerous. So when we're young, certain things are dangerous or they're extremely uncomfortable. So the brain says, don't do those things. And then as we grow up, we interact with the world more. We eventually start interacting with people more. And we are taught either through experience or through programming that certain people are dangerous. Certain people are different. Certain people should be avoided, or certain experiences with certain people should be avoided. So when we're young, our brain is taking all this information in, and all it's trying to do is just keep us safe as much as it possibly can. And so it overgeneralizes in order to keep us extremely safe. We move to these extremes because the brain wants to keep us extremely safe. But in the process, we miss out on a lot of the individual specific experiences. So classic example is somebody, when they're young, gets bitten by a dog. The brain says, oh, anything that looks like that, anything that has legs that look like that, anything that has a mouth that looks like that, anything that has eyes and a nose and barks like that and sounds like that and moves like that is dangerous because that one was. So I would rather try to avoid all the things that remind me of that. And then the brain starts to over-exaggerate, and the brain starts to get to these extreme levels of safety. So now we're not only afraid of dogs, but we're afraid of the dog that looks like the one that bit us, but now we're afraid of big dogs. We're afraid of little dogs. And then we're afraid of animals in general. We're afraid of anything that looks like it has four legs and looks like it's animalistic according to our fears and what we experienced with that one dog way back then. And then we might even overgeneralize it to now we're afraid of anything that's moving. We're afraid of anything that moves toward us. We're afraid of anything that's close to us. The brain is doing everything that it can to protect us, and it does so through extreme labeling. through extreme generalizations, all in order to protect us. So that same concept is happening with pretty much all perceptions of danger. To protect, to conserve, to protect from harm. So the main way that our brain seeks to protect itself is that it looks for familiarity. If we can stay in control, then we don't have to fear something that we've never seen before, something that we've never experienced before. So the brain says, everything that's happened in my past, I understand, I'm familiar with that. I know how to handle everything that has gone on in my past. If I don't know how to handle that thing that's gone on in my past, then I can only try to avoid that thing. But as long as I can take all of my potential future experiences and put it into something that I already understand from my past, then I won't get surprised. So the brain that's afraid of harm hates surprises. It doesn't like something that it doesn't already have a box for. So it's easier, rather than continually creating individual experiences and continually learning one-on-one from the human in front of you, the brain says, I'm going to chalk that person up to anybody that looks like that person, that matches an experience I had in the past. So we have all these labels to categorize the buckets so that we can put people in the buckets. And it's easier to increase the generalization to fit buckets we already have than it is to build more buckets. That's what our brains are predisposed to do, especially when we get to adulthood and we've got all these experiences from our past. We've got shame, we've got pain, we've got all the traumas, we've got all these painful decisions and memories and humanity and just all these experiences that we have in the past that we're trying to avoid ourselves from. So we're trying to avoid from experiencing again. So we just want to keep all of the folders that we have because it's way simpler, and then put people into the folders. And it doesn't matter if somebody says, no, but I'm actually not like that person. It's easier for the brain to go, yeah, but just in case you're dangerous like they are, I'd rather put you in a bucket than to avoid, or sorry, not avoid, but then to risk danger. See, anything out of control to the brain means risking danger. If I don't label you as dangerous and you end up hurting me, well, now I will probably, the function of the brain will probably beat myself up because I should have known better, right? That thing looked like a dog, smelled like a dog, and I gave him a chance and he bit me again. So we would rather not risk danger. Therefore, we over-exaggerate, all in the attempt to protect. So this concept of control and how it fuels our labels is really important to understand, because we actually can do something about that on a personal level. I'll get to that a little bit later. So we're constantly seeking familiarity. That which is familiar is safe. That's one of the reasons why we are naturally, and I don't know if I would say naturally as much as I would say programmed, to feel safe with things that look like us, feel safe with things that talk like us, feel safe with things that we relate to. We find safety and comfort in people that we relate to. Because if they're more like us instead of different than us, then they're less dangerous. That's the way the brain is working. So these labels are used to prejudge danger. And anything we don't understand, anything that we haven't seen before, anything that we're not certain about, it's better to just call it dangerous than to explore it. because it's all about conserving energy, conserving self. So rather than seeking to understand things or people that are different, we would rather keep it simple and just avoid them. We would rather keep it simple and just label them. We would rather keep it simple and make them the bad ones, rather than actually explore another human being or actually explore another set of beliefs that don't match what's already familiar with us. So a few days ago, I posted on Facebook a quote that just hit me when I was in this conversation with somebody. And the quote says, I determine my boundary of safety. No, I'm sorry. I was misreading that. The quote says, I cannot see you as being different than me unless my identity boundaries exclude you. Let me say that again. I cannot see you as being different than me unless my identity boundaries exclude you. So because we're constantly committed to this protection, we build these boundaries. And we determine where the boundaries are. We determine how close to us or how far away from us these boundaries are. The more insecure I am, the more afraid of others that I am, the further away from me the boundaries are, meaning I'm separating myself from the potential danger more by building the walls as far away from me as possible. So I don't let people get near me. I don't let the threat get close to me, so my boundaries are really far apart. Because anything inside these walls is dangerous. Anything inside these walls is unstable. That's insecurity. So the more insecure I am, the further away the boundaries will be, and the more dangerous you are. So these labels of separation, what it does is it breaks rapport. It doesn't allow us to see ourselves in other people. And if I can't see myself in you, and I'm insecure, and I'm afraid of being threatened, if I can't see myself in you, if I can't see safety in you, then all I see is danger. All I see is threats. All I see is a world full of dangerous threats. And then it's me versus the threats. It's all rivalry. In the presence of rivalry, there will be a winner and there will be a loser. There will be a right and there will be a wrong. There will be a good and there will be a bad. There has to be one versus the other in a rivalrous situation. So the more that I'm insecure with myself, the more that I see rivalry everywhere. Why? Because I'm trying to protect myself. The more secure I am with myself, the closer to me these boundaries can be. Because you getting close to me doesn't threaten me. You getting close to who I am and me looking in your eyes from a closer distance doesn't scare me if I'm secure with myself. If I don't see threat in the differences, if I don't see rivalry between you and I. And so the root of all of this, in terms of society's conflict, in terms of interpersonal conflict, the root of all of this is really, if we take it all the way down and boil it all the way down, it's our relationship to the concept of difference. How do we relate to the concept of difference? The more insecure I am, the more difference I'll see in everybody because I'm unstable. I'm unstable with myself. And if I'm standing on unstable ground, I'm afraid of a light wind. I'm afraid of a little tiny breeze because it can knock me over and I can fall through this ground that's unstable. But if I'm solid in my stance and I'm solid on my foundation and I'm connected to my roots, then turbulence in the air isn't going to knock me over. Differences in people won't threaten me because I'm stable in my own existence. I'm secure with myself. So security with self determines security with others. Inversely, the more secure I am with myself, the less I need to protect. Depends on how you word it, whether it's inverse or direct. So as I become more secure with myself, I become more secure with the difference in others. And so our big conflicts in society, you take any of those labels that I mentioned in the beginning, or any other labels that are at the core of any kind of conflict, the problem, the root cause is actually that two sides of people, or two individual people, are seeing difference in each other, and they're threatened by the difference. And especially in the way that we communicate a lot of times in society about these bigger issues, there's all kinds of energy attached to the labels. There's all kinds of energy attached to the situation. And that energy is usually because there's some sort of emotional experience we've had, some kind of negative experience in our body based on that label, based on us being confronted by, or us confronting some version of that label. So we feel like, and I'm specifically using the word feel, we feel like our relationship to that label is true because that experience lives in our body. So we can feel what racism means. We can feel what Jewish means. We can feel what prejudice means. We can feel what oppression means. We can feel it based on our experience of it in the past. And when it lives in our body like that, a lot of times it blinds us because our body says, I'm feeling the danger right now. Protect yourself. And then we armor up. We put on all these suits of armor to protect anybody that's potentially threatening to us. So when we attach emotional energy and embodied experiences to this whole concept, then it becomes more difficult to manage. It becomes more difficult to control because our emotions get into a frenzy saying, we're under attack, we're being threatened, we might die. I mean, it literally operates at a primal level where we think that threat equals potential death. And so we're much more likely to push people away. We're much more likely to rush to judgment because the emotion on top of the difference, on top of the labels, on top of the rivalry, increases the perceived risk. So all these conflicts that we have in society, some of them are so ridiculous, are at a point where they've become irrational. Irrational because people's thoughts about the situation or thoughts about the other people are beyond rational thinking. Because they've become so emotionally embodied in trying to protect themselves that they're not even concerned. They don't care about the rational thinking anymore. They just care about staying alive. So it's much easier to just label and separate than it is to explore. Now, the challenge with that, or I'm going to put it a different way, the question that each of us needs to ask ourselves is, how do we want to experience our existence on this planet? And if we want to experience our existence on this planet in a constant state of fear, in a constant state of threat, in a constant state of prejudice, in a constant state of rivalry, then do everything I've just been talking about. But we cannot be happy and constantly threatened at the same time.
If you like this video, check out that video, which is a vulnerable conversation about healthy versus toxic masculinity. The safe, healthy, masculine man isn't peacocking around, trying to show his colors, trying to impress people, trying to position himself. He's not trying to flatter. He's not trying to chase. He's